My sister decided not to invite our older brother to her wedding because of his long history of causing problems. When our parents found out and announced they wouldn't attend, she uninvited them too. I grew up in a small town in Indiana with my older brother Matt, my younger sister Natalia, and our parents. Matt was 2 years older than me, and from the very beginning it was obvious he was the favorite. Not subtle either, like painfully obvious to anyone with functioning eyes. It all started because Matt was good at football. Not just school team good. People in town genuinely believed he might land a college scholarship someday. Coaches praised him constantly. Neighbors talked about him like he was already headed for the NFL. And my parents ate up every single word. Every time Matt scored a touchdown, my mom acted like she was the one out there running plays. My dad called him our ticket to the big time. Meanwhile, I was just there existing in the background like furniture. Nobody noticed until they needed to move it. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't some friendless loner kid hiding in my room. I had buddies. I did decent in school, played video games, normal stuff. But compared to Matt, it was like I was completely invisible. He was loud, confident, always the center of attention. I was quieter, more into drawing and music, not really interested in sports. And apparently, that was enough for Matt to start treating me like his personal punching bag from day one. He'd take my stuff without asking, call me soft in front of his friends, make fun of my clothes, my hair, the way I talked. And if I ever got mad about it, he'd laugh like I was the crazy one for being upset. My parents had the same reaction every single time. Boys will be boys. That was their favorite line. Like Matt physically could not help himself from being a jerk, and I just needed to accept it. One of my earliest memories of Matt showing his true colors was my 10th birthday party. I had a few friends over from school. We were in the backyard eating cake, having a good time, and Matt decided that was the perfect moment to dump an entire bucket of cold water on my head in front of everyone. Ruined my cake, got my presents wet. Kids laughed awkwardly because they didn't know what else to do, and Matt stood there grinning like he just won the Super Bowl. I ran inside crying. My mom told me I was overreacting. My dad said I needed to lighten up and learn to take a joke. Matt didn't even get in trouble. Didn't even get a stern look. Nothing. That was the pattern for pretty much my entire childhood. Matt could do whatever he wanted whenever he wanted. If he broke something, it was an accident. If he insulted someone, it was just a joke. And if I ever dared to snap back, I was the problem. I was the one who needed to calm down. By the time I hit middle school, I started noticing other people could see it too. Teachers would pull me aside and ask why Matt was so mean to me sometimes. One of our neighbors straight up told my mom that Matt shouldn't pick on me so much. Mom laughed it off like the lady was being ridiculous. Nothing to see here, just brothers being brothers. Matt only got worse as he got older. It wasn't just teasing anymore. He was actively trying to humiliate me whenever he could. One time in 8th grade, he told my crush that I still slept with a nightlight, which wasn't even true, but she believed him and she stopped talking to me for weeks. When I told Mom what happened, she just said he was teasing and didn't mean anything by it. Natalia was still pretty young back then, maybe 6 or 7, so she wasn't really involved in any of it. Matt mostly ignored her. Sometimes she'd tell him to leave me alone, but she didn't have any power in that house either. Nobody did except Matt and the parents who worshipped him. The golden boy treatment really hit its peak once Matt started high school football. Suddenly, everything in our lives revolved around his games. Family vacations got canceled because of tournaments. Dinners were scheduled around his practices. My parents wore his jersey to the grocery store like he was already a professional athlete. Meanwhile, I was getting rides to art class from my friends' parents because Mom and Dad were too busy with Matt's schedule. The thing is, Matt wasn't even close to being a perfect son outside of football. He barely passed his classes, talked back to teachers, constantly partied with his friends on weekends, got into minor trouble here and there, and still my parents treated him like he walked on water, like his ability to throw a ball meant he could do no wrong in any other area of his life. And me? I kept my head down, got decent grades, never got in trouble at school, stayed out of drama, didn't matter, none of it mattered. By the time I was 14, I completely stopped telling my parents when Matt did something messed up. There was no point. They weren't going to do anything about it except make me feel worse for bringing it up. One night at dinner, Matt made a joke about how I was probably going to end up living in Mom and Dad's basement forever. Everyone at the table laughed except me. I just sat there eating, counting down the years until I could finally get out. Funny thing is, years later, that basement comment would come back to bite him harder than anyone predicted. By the time I hit high school, I'd already learned the unspoken rules of our household. Matt did whatever he wanted. Mom and Dad defended him no matter what, and I stayed in the background trying not to make waves. But high school somehow made everything worse. Matt had more freedom now. A car, a bigger friend group, more opportunities to make my life miserable in creative new ways. One of the first things he did my freshman year was take my bike. Said he needed it because his car wasn't starting. That was a lie. He rode it to a friend's house, left it outside overnight, and it got stolen. When I told mom and dad, their response was classic. Well, you should have locked it up better. Like I was the one who left it there. I'd saved up the entire summer mowing lawns to buy that bike. Then there was my first real date. I was 16. This girl Kayla from my math class agreed to go to the movies with me. I was nervous, but excited. Everything was going fine until Matt showed up at the same theater with a group of his friends. Halfway through the movie, we went to the lobby for snacks, and Matt spotted us immediately. He started yelling across the lobby so everyone could hear, "Hey Travis, don't get nervous now, man. Don't cry if she holds your hand." His buddies were dying laughing. Kayla was so embarrassed she barely spoke to me for the rest of the night. When I told mom about it later, expecting at least some sympathy, she said Matt was just teasing and didn't mean anything by it. Same line I'd heard 100 times before. At that point, I was pretty convinced Matt could literally burn the house down and they'd find a way to blame the wind. The big turning point came during Matt's junior year of high school. He was 17, I was 15. Up until then, football had been the entire gravitational center of our household. Everything orbited around Matt's games, Matt's practices, Matt's potential scholarship offers. He was the star, the future college athlete, the one everyone thought was destined for greatness. Then one random afternoon, after getting into some argument with his coach about playing time, Matt quit the team, just walked out mid-season, told everyone he was focusing on his future, whatever that meant, coming from a 17-year-old who'd never focused on anything except football his entire life. Turns out his future involved sleeping until noon, staying up all night playing video games, and hanging out with his buddies doing nothing productive. He spent the rest of junior year and all of senior year basically living in the basement like some kind of nocturnal creature. My parents kept telling relatives he was taking a break before college scouts came calling. Nobody called, not a single school, not even community college recruiters. Meanwhile, I was actually doing fine. Sophomore year, I joined the music club, got a part-time job at a pizza place called Joey's. Tried to stay out of the way while Matt drifted around the house acting like the world owed him something for existing. But Matt couldn't leave me alone even when he had nothing going on. Maybe especially because he had nothing going on. He started messing with my stuff constantly. He'd go into my room when I wasn't home, take things, hide them, sometimes break them for fun. The worst incident was the guitar I'd saved up an entire year to buy. I came home from school one day and found it snapped in 2 pieces on the floor. Matt claimed he accidentally bumped it off the stand. An accident, sure. Mom told me I should have put it somewhere safer. I completely lost it that time. First and only time I actually shoved him. He shoved me back. We started yelling. Things escalated fast. Dad came in and broke it up. And guess who got grounded? Me. Because Matt told them I started it. Even threw in some fake tears for good measure, saying I was always mad at him for no reason. I remember standing there thinking this guy could literally rob a bank and somehow it would be my fault for not stopping him. After that, I started working extra hours at the pizza place. Partly because I wanted money to save for college, partly because every hour I spent there was an hour I didn't have to spend at home. My boss, this ex-military guy named Joe, liked me because I showed up on time and actually worked hard. Sometimes I'd volunteer for closing shifts just to avoid family dinners, any excuse to be somewhere else. At home, everything still revolved around Matt. Even though he wasn't doing anything, even though he'd thrown away his one actual talent, my parents still acted like any day now, big opportunities would magically appear. Colleges would line up to recruit their special boy. The reality was, he barely graduated. His GPA was garbage. No sports teams wanted him. He had no plan, no backup, no clue what he was doing with his life. The night of Matt's graduation party was when things really exploded. Mom and Dad threw this huge backyard bash and invited half the neighborhood. Matt was strutting around like he was king of the world, accepting congratulations for an achievement that should have been the bare minimum expectation. Someone asked him about his college plans and he said he was keeping his options open like he was in high demand or something, like schools were fighting over him. Later that night, I overheard him telling a group of people that I was probably going to be stuck living at home forever. That was rich coming from the guy with no job, no college acceptance letters, and no plan beyond his next gaming session. I didn't say anything then, but I remember thinking to myself, one day, this whole golden boy fantasy is going to blow up in their faces. And it did. It absolutely did. I moved out the same week I graduated high school, packed up everything I owned, threw it in my car, and drove 3 hours to Purdue University without looking back. Mom cried like I was abandoning the family by going to college. Dad said, "Don't forget where you came from," which was hilarious. Coming from the guy who couldn't name a single one of my classes or hobbies because he was too busy obsessing over Matt's football stats for years. Matt didn't even bother to see me off. He was still asleep when I left that morning. Typical. College felt like freedom in a way I'd never experienced before. No one yelling at me, no one breaking my stuff, no parents acting like I was invisible unless they needed something. I got to work, studied hard, landed a job at the campus library, joined the music club, made actual friends who didn't treat me like garbage. For the first time in my life, I could walk around without constantly bracing for someone to mess with me just because they felt like it. Meanwhile, back home, Matt's life was already starting to crumble. Remember how he was supposed to be the big football star, the one with all the potential? Yeah, that dream died fast. He signed up for community college classes but barely showed up. Quit after one semester and told everyone school just wasn't for him. What he was really doing was sleeping until noon every day, playing Xbox all night, and mooching off mom and dad indefinitely. They still acted like he was special. He just needs time, mom would tell relatives whenever anyone asked what Matt was doing. He's keeping his options open, Dad said, like Matt was some free agent athlete weighing offers from multiple teams instead of an unemployed 20-year-old living rent-free in his childhood bedroom. I stayed out of it as much as possible. I had my own life to build finally, and I wasn't about to waste energy arguing with them about Matt's failures. But every time I went home for holidays, Matt found a way to start something. The worst was Christmas my sophomore year. I brought my girlfriend at the time, Rachel, home to meet my family. I warned her about Matt beforehand, but she didn't really understand until she witnessed him in action. We were sitting in the living room just having a normal conversation, and out of nowhere Matt goes, "Hey, Rachel, did Travis tell you he used to cry every time he lost at Mario Kart?" Everyone laughed. Then he added, "Don't get him too excited tonight. He might cry again." Rachel looked mortified. I was furious, and Mom told me to stop being so sensitive when I asked Matt to knock it off. That was the last time Rachel came home with me for the holidays. Can't really blame her. Natalia wasn't home much either during those years. When she turned 18, she started college in New York. Think she saw how toxic things were at home and decided distance was the only solution. She didn't come back for fall break her freshman year, skipped a few holidays. When Mom complained about it, Natalia just said she was too busy with school. Matt accused her of betraying the family, told anyone who would listen that Natalia thought she was too good for them now. Funny thing was, Natalia actually stayed in touch with me way more than she did with our parents. She'd call me regularly to talk about her classes, her new friends, her boyfriend Daniel. We actually built a real relationship once we were both out of that house. By the time I was a junior, Matt was 22 and still living at home. No job, no education, no plan whatsoever. He worked at a car wash for 2 months and quit because the boss was a jerk. Tried landscaping for one summer and quit because it was too hot outside. Every single time he quit something, Mom made excuses. He just hasn't found the right fit yet, like he was some delicate flower who needed the perfect conditions to bloom instead of a grown adult who needed to get his act together. Dad started pressuring me around that time about not visiting home often enough. Said the family was drifting apart because Natalia and I were too busy with our own lives. I told him maybe if things at home weren't constantly revolving around Matt and his problems, people would actually want to be there. He didn't appreciate that answer. The summer before my senior year at Purdue, I went home for a few weeks to work a temp job and save some money. I figured I could tolerate the situation for a short stretch. I was wrong. One night at dinner, Matt started making comments about how I thought I was better than everyone just because I was in college. I tried ignoring him at first, but he wouldn't let up. Kept going and going. Said my degree was going to be useless. Said I'd probably end up working at a gas station like half the people with degrees. Just kept poking and poking. I finally snapped. At least I won't be living in Mom and Dad's basement at 23 with no job and no clue what I'm doing with my life. Dead silence at the table. Dad told me to apologize. I laughed and said no because I wasn't wrong about anything I'd said. Matt got mad, picked up a dinner roll, and threw it at my head across the table like we were 5 years old. I stood up, walked out, and drove back to campus the next morning even though summer classes hadn't started yet. That was the last time I stayed at my parents' house for longer than a single weekend. After that, holidays were hit or miss. Sometimes I showed up for a quick visit, sometimes I didn't bother at all. Natalia was even worse about coming home than I was. Mom kept saying the family was falling apart. I privately thought, Maybe it was just finally falling into its natural place, broken pieces settling where they belonged. Natalia met Daniel during her junior year in New York. By then, Matt was 27. I was 25. The gap between our lives and his had never felt bigger. Natalia called me about a month after they started dating, sounding happier than I'd ever heard her. She said Daniel was smart, funny, had a good job lined up after graduation, and actually listened when she talked. Revolutionary concept in our family. I met him the following summer when they drove through Indiana on a road trip. Daniel was one of those guys who didn't need to say much to make a good impression. Confident but not arrogant. Shook my hand firmly, asked about my life, even brought my parents some fancy coffee from New York as a gift. Mom loved him immediately. Dad did too. Matt didn't. The first time they met, Daniel casually asked Matt what he was doing for work these days. Matt mumbled something vague about taking time to figure things out. Daniel just nodded politely and changed the subject. You could tell Matt absolutely hated not being the most impressive person in the room for once. Someone else was getting attention and respect, and he couldn't stand it. Christmas rolled around that year. First time the whole family was together in over a year. Me, Natalia, Daniel, Mom, Dad, and of course Matt. From the start, Matt was trying way too hard to act like the big man, bragging about his old football glory days, talking over people, cracking dumb jokes that nobody laughed at. Most of the actual conversation was between Natalia, Daniel, and me, catching up on real-life stuff. You could practically see Matt's irritation building. He hated not being the center of attention. Absolutely could not tolerate it. That's when he pulled his classic move. We were all sitting in the living room after dinner. Natalia got up to grab dessert from the kitchen. Matt followed her in, and a minute later he came walking back out holding this huge bowl of water, grinning like an idiot, clearly planning to dump it on her when she walked through the doorway. Before Matt could even move, Daniel stepped directly in front of him. Calm voice, steady posture. Put it back. Matt laughed nervously, trying to play it off. It's just for fun. Relax. Daniel didn't budge an inch. I said, put it back. Matt froze, probably because he realized for the first time that Daniel wasn't like me or Natalia. He wasn't going to shrug it off and let Matt do whatever he wanted. He wasn't intimidated by Matt either. Daniel leaned slightly closer. You throw that water, and you and I are going to have a serious problem. Matt stared at him for a long moment. Then he slowly set the bowl down on the counter and walked off without saying another word, like nothing happened. Natalia came back into the room, noticed the bowl sitting there, gave me a confused look. I just shook my head. Mom immediately tried to smooth everything over. Matt was only joking around. Daniel didn't even look at her. Doesn't seem very funny to me. The mood shifted hard after that. Matt stayed quiet the rest of the night. Natalia and Daniel left early. Said they were tired from traveling. Next day, Mom called me privately to say Daniel had overreacted, and Matt was just being playful like he always was. I told her maybe if she'd bothered to tell Matt to knock it off when we were kids, he wouldn't still be acting like a 12-year-old at 27 years old. She didn't like that response. Over the next year, Natalia visited home less and less, sometimes skipped holidays completely. Mom complained constantly, said Natalia was too wrapped up in her new boyfriend to care about family anymore. The truth was simpler than that. She just didn't want to deal with Matt or the endless drama surrounding him. Neither did I. A year after that Christmas incident, Natalia called me with big news. Daniel proposed. She sounded genuinely excited, but also nervous. I asked what was wrong. She hesitated before answering. I don't want Matt at the wedding. I wasn't even slightly surprised. After everything that happened over the years, it made perfect sense. She had every right to want her wedding day to be peaceful instead of another Matt-centered disaster. What about Mom and Dad? I asked. She sighed. I'll invite them. But if they try to make this about Matt, they can stay home too. This is my day, not his. When she told our parents the plan, things went exactly how we both expected. Mom said she was being completely unfair. Dad said weddings were family events and Matt absolutely should be there. They argued with her for weeks, called her selfish, accused her of trying to split the family apart. Classic manipulation tactic. Natalia didn't budge once. He's not invited. End of story. That's my decision, and it's final. Then the rumors started. Someone heard through the grapevine that Matt might show up anyway. One of his friends mentioned at the gym that Matt was planning to crash the wedding because nobody tells him where he can or can't go, because of course he'd make it about himself. Couldn't let his little sister have one single day without him being the center of attention. Natalia wasn't scared, but she also wasn't taking any chances. Daniel had 2 college buddies who worked as cops. They volunteered to attend the wedding and keep an eye on things just in case. That's when I decided to visit Mom and Dad before the ceremony. I was completely done being quiet about all of this. Years of favoritism excuses and defending Matt's behavior no matter what he did had piled up to the breaking point. This time, they weren't going to talk their way out of it. I drove home 2 weeks before the wedding because I knew things were spiraling out of control. Mom had been blowing up my phone nonstop about how Natalia was destroying the family. Dad left me a voicemail saying the wedding was a disgrace without Matt being included. When I walked into the house, Mom started in immediately. She can't seriously expect us to come if Matt's not even invited. I told her that was exactly what Natalia expected, and she had every right to expect it. She's your sister, Mom said, like that was some kind of checkmate argument. You should be talking sense into her. Number one, I said firmly, she doesn't want him there, and she has every right after everything he's done to both of us over the years. End of discussion. Mom looked at me like I'd started speaking another language. That night at dinner, Dad joined the campaign. Your mother's really upset about all this. Natalia needs to reconsider her position. I set my fork down hard. Why? So Matt can ruin her wedding day, like he's ruined every holiday and family gathering for the past 20 years. Dad leaned back in his chair, frowning. He's her brother. Yeah, I said, and he spent over 2 decades treating her and me like garbage while you two looked the other way and made excuses for him. That's a fact. Mom told me to watch my tone. I told them maybe they should have watched Matt's behavior 10 years ago, when it might have actually made a difference. Then I asked them something that shut the entire table up. What exactly has Matt done with his life? He's in his mid-20s. No job, no education, no plans, lives here rent-free. And you still treat him like he's some kind of gift from heaven. Why? Dad started with his usual defense. Matt just needs more time to figure things out. He's had time, I said. All of it handed to him on a silver platter while you blamed everyone else for his screw-ups. And now you expect Natalia to risk her wedding day turning into another one of his disasters. That's not happening. Mom's face went red. Dad told me I was being disrespectful to them in their own house. Number one, I said what's actually disrespectful is you two acting like Matt deserves everything and Natalia owes him a place at her wedding after the way he's treated her. She doesn't owe him anything. Nobody said a word for a solid minute after that. The next day, Mom called Natalia directly for one last attempt at changing her mind. Natalia didn't budge even slightly. If you bring him to my wedding, don't bother coming at all. Those are your options. That sent Mom into a full meltdown. She accused Natalia of deliberately humiliating the family. Natalia told her she was done arguing and hung up the phone. Meanwhile, Matt was running his mouth to anyone who would listen, saying he was definitely going to show up anyway. One of his friends told someone that Matt planned to bring a couple of buddies with him and wasn't going to let his own sister ban him like some stranger off the street. When I told Natalia about the threat, she didn't even sound surprised. Daniel's friends will handle it if he tries anything. I'm not letting him ruin this day. 2 days before the wedding, I went back to my parents' house one more time just to make absolutely clear where I stood on everything. You know, if Matt crashes the wedding, they're calling the police, right? I said bluntly. Mom glared at me. He wouldn't actually do that. He would, I said, because you've spent his entire life letting him believe he can do whatever he wants without consequences. This is what you built. Dad crossed his arms defensively. You think you're better than your brother just because you went to college? No, I said evenly. I think I'm better than him because I don't spend my time making other people's lives miserable for my own entertainment. That's the difference. That's when Dad said something I'll never forget. If your sister keeps this up with Matt, your mother and I might not go to the wedding either. I actually laughed out loud. Then don't. Seriously, go ahead and stay home. You can watch Matt sit in this house for the next 30 years while you keep pretending he's your special little star. Nobody's going to miss you at the wedding if you can't respect Natalia's decision. That's a promise. Dad told me to get out of his house. I said fine, but before I walked out the door, I turned back one last time. You know what the saddest part of all this is? Natalia is marrying a guy who treats her better than her own family ever did. Think about that. Neither of them said a single word as I left. On my way to my car, I saw Matt standing in the driveway, leaning against his vehicle with a smirk on his face. Big wedding coming up, he said. Maybe I'll crash it and make a speech. I stopped walking and looked him directly in the eyes. You show up there and you'll be leaving with a police escort. Try it if you want to find out. His smirk faded just a little bit. The day before the wedding, Mom texted me saying they still hadn't decided if they were coming or not. I told her to let me know either way so I could warn Natalia ahead of time. She didn't respond. That night, Natalia called me. If they show up with Matt, they're all getting removed. Daniel already briefed the venue staff on the situation. You think they'll actually try it? I asked. She paused for a long moment. Honestly, I wouldn't put anything past them at this point. The wedding was Saturday afternoon at this beautiful outdoor venue about an hour from our hometown. Natalia and Daniel had intentionally kept everything small and intimate. Close friends, a few relatives who weren't part of the drama. No massive guest list that would be hard to manage if problems arose. I got there early because Natalia wanted me keeping her updated in real time if anything happened with Mom, Dad, or Matt. Daniel's two cop friends were already there dressed like regular wedding guests, but strategically positioned to watch the entrance. By noon, guests were arriving steadily. No sign of my parents or Matt anywhere. At 1 o'clock, Natalia came out from the bridal suite looking stressed. Mom texted me. She's saying they might be running late. Just her and Dad, I asked carefully. She shook her head slowly. She didn't specify who. Daniel walked over calm and steady as always. We've got people watching the entrance. If Matt shows up, they won't even make it past the parking lot. Don't worry. Natalia nodded, but didn't look entirely convinced. Half an hour before the ceremony was supposed to start, Mom finally texted me directly. We're not coming. Not without your brother. I showed Natalia the message. She didn't even blink, didn't look upset, just nodded once. Okay, she said calmly. Then Grandpa's walking me down the aisle instead. And that was that. No tears. No second guessing. No last-minute change of heart. She was completely done with all of them. The ceremony started exactly on time. Grandpa walked Natalia down the aisle, while Mom and Dad were presumably sitting at home with Matt convincing themselves they were the real victims in this situation. The whole thing was absolutely perfect. Natalia looked genuinely happy. Daniel couldn't stop smiling, and everyone actually present was celebrating instead of managing some manufactured crisis for once. But the peace didn't last long. Right after the ceremony ended, while guests were walking toward the reception tent, one of Daniel's cop friends approached me quickly. Heads up. Matt's car just pulled into the parking lot. Natalia overheard him. You've got to be kidding me. Daniel put his arm around her protectively. Go enjoy your reception. We'll handle this. Trust me. I followed the cop over to the parking lot. Matt was climbing out of his car with two of his buddies. None of them were even dressed for a wedding. Matt was wearing jeans and a wrinkled t-shirt like he was showing up to some backyard barbecue instead of his sister's wedding. Turn around, the cop said firmly before Matt even finished shutting his car door. You're not welcome here, Matt smirked. I'm here for my sister's wedding. You're not invited, the cop said. Leave now. Matt looked past him directly at me. You're really gonna let them do this to your own brother? I stared right back at him. You've had months to actually get invited by being a decent person. You chose not to. Take the hint. One of Matt's buddies muttered something about how family is family. The cop held up his hand firmly. You take one step past this parking lot, you're trespassing on private property. That's your choice to make. Matt glared at me with pure hatred in his eyes. This is all because of you. You turned everyone against me. I actually laughed. She's been done with you for years, Matt. You were just too self-absorbed to notice. For a second, I genuinely thought he was going to try something stupid. But then Daniel walked up beside me. He wasn't yelling, didn't need to. His presence alone changed the energy completely. You need to leave, Daniel said, voice calm, but absolutely firm right now. If you step past this parking lot, you're trespassing, and security will make sure you're escorted out in a way you won't enjoy. Matt's smirk finally cracked. He looked at his two buddies, probably realizing neither of them actually wanted to spend the night getting arrested over his tantrum. This isn't over, he muttered as he got back in his car. Yeah, I said. It really is, though. They drove off. Back at the reception, nobody even mentioned the parking lot incident to Natalia. She danced, laughed, took pictures, enjoyed her wedding day exactly like she deserved. Daniel kept a watchful eye on things the rest of the evening, but Matt never came back. Later that night, when things were winding down and guests were starting to leave, Mom finally texted Natalia again. We can't believe you would embarrass the family like this on your wedding day. Natalia didn't even bother responding. She just handed me her phone. You deal with them. I'm done. I texted back from her phone. She didn't embarrass anyone. You embarrassed yourselves by choosing Matt over your daughter for 20 years straight. Don't contact her tonight. She's celebrating. Mom didn't respond after that. After the wedding officially ended, a few of us stayed behind to help clean up the venue. Natalia hugged me tight before leaving for her honeymoon. Thanks for having my back through all of this, she said. Always, I told her. That's what family is actually supposed to do. On the drive home, I kept waiting for my phone to blow up with angry calls from mom or dad. Nothing came through until the next morning. Dad's voicemail was furious. Said I turned my sister against the family. I deleted it without calling back. 2 days after the wedding, Mom sent a long text demanding an apology for excluding Matt. I didn't reply. Natalia didn't either. A week later, Dad left another angry voicemail. Same script he'd been running for years. I deleted that one too. Natalia blocked both of them. Matt tried calling me once. Left a rambling message saying I was jealous of him. Jealous of what? He didn't say. By fall, Matt had started some pyramid scheme selling overpriced energy drinks. Told everyone he'd be rich in 6 months. That lasted 3 weeks before he quit. Then he tried selling car detailing services out of the garage. That lasted 2 weeks. Then he got into cryptocurrency and lost what little money he had saved. Mom and Dad bailed him out again. Meanwhile, Natalia and Daniel bought a house in upstate New York. She got promoted to senior analyst. They threw a housewarming party. I drove up with my girlfriend and spent the whole weekend there. Daniel's parents came too. Good food, good people, no drama. That Christmas, Natalia hosted dinner at her new place. She invited me, my girlfriend, a few cousins, Daniel's family, and Grandpa. She didn't invite Mom, Dad, or Matt. Christmas morning, Mom sent a group text saying the family used to be close before certain people got involved. Nobody responded. 2 months later, Matt wrecked Dad's truck. Borrowed it without asking, took it joyriding with his buddies, and wrapped it around a telephone pole. He walked away fine, but the truck was totaled. Insurance didn't cover everything. Dad paid $4,000 out of pocket. That spring, Matt got fired from a warehouse job for showing up late 3 times in 1 week. Then he got fired from a restaurant for arguing with a manager. Then he quit a landscaping gig because the hours were too early. Dad got sick that summer. Nothing life-threatening, but bad enough that he couldn't work for 3 months. Mom called me asking for help with bills. I asked if Matt had gotten a job yet. She hesitated. He's trying. I told her I hoped Dad recovered, but I wasn't moving back and I wasn't sending money. She hung up on me. The following spring, Natalia had her first baby, a boy named James. Mom and Dad still hadn't met him. Natalia told them they could visit if they apologized for the wedding and admitted they'd been wrong about Matt for years. They refused, said they wouldn't be blackmailed, so Daniel's parents became the only grandparents James would know. They drove up from New Jersey every month to visit, brought toys, helped with babysitting, took a million pictures. Meanwhile, Mom and Dad sat at home with Matt and missed everything. Last fall, Matt got arrested. Reckless driving. He ran a red light doing 50 in a 30 zone and T-boned another car in an intersection. Nobody was seriously hurt, but the other driver's car was totaled. Matt spent the night in jail. Mom and Dad paid his bail, paid his lawyer, paid the settlement to avoid a lawsuit. His license got suspended for a year. A month after that, Mom called me, said they were rewriting their will, hinted that they were leaving everything to Matt because he needs it most. I told her that was fine. She sounded surprised. You don't care? I said no because he'll burn through it in a year and end up right back where he started. She didn't have a response. 2 weeks ago, Natalia called me, said Matt had been posting on social media about how his siblings abandoned him, how we turned our backs on family, how we thought we were better than everyone. One of his posts said he was going to show up at Natalia's house and demand to see his nephew. Daniel handled it. He called Matt directly and told him if he stepped foot on their property, he'd be arrested for trespassing. Matt called him a bunch of names and hung up. He never showed. Last weekend, I drove up to see Natalia and the baby. We had dinner, watched a movie, played with James on the living room floor. Daniel's parents came over for brunch on Sunday. My girlfriend and I stayed in their guest room. On the drive home, Natalia texted me a photo of James taking his first steps, holding on to the coffee table, grinning at the camera. Mom and Dad have never seen that kid in person, never held him, never watched him crawl or heard him laugh. They're missing all of it because they couldn't let go of Matt for 5 minutes. My cousin told me last week that Matt's still living at home, still unemployed, still gaming all night in the basement, still waiting for something to magically change without him doing anything different. Meanwhile, I just got promoted at work. Natalia is up for another raise. We're planning a trip together this summer. Her and Daniel and James, me and my girlfriend renting a cabin somewhere quiet. No drama, no phone calls from parents trying to guilt us, just family that actually acts like family. Mom texted me yesterday asking if we could talk soon. I left her on read. Some things don't need a response.